everyone, a very warm welcome. It's 9 p.m. IST and we are coming to you live from the WION headquarters in Noida, India. I am Molly Gambhir and this is Gravitas with a whole new look, but the same old spirit. Let's get started. Benjamin Netanyahu is caught in a fix, or shall I say, caught in a trap. It is the Biden trap. And the question is, what will Netanyahu choose? Power or hostages? And can he really get out of the Biden trap? We break all of this down for you as a part of our top story tonight. And here's a look at what else is lined up for you on the show. We tell you all about India's undersea fortress. In other words, a sanctuary for its submarines. You do not want to miss this story. We also get to the latest on the Russia-Ukraine war as Russia opens up 3 new fronts. What's happening on the ground? What's the strategy looking like? That's coming up shortly. If you are watching the show from North India, I know the heat is unbearable in various parts. But in Delhi, a big question is doing the rounds. Will the capital become a barren desert? All this and more coming up tonight on Gravitas. Has the Biden trap trapped Netanyahu? That's the question we are asking tonight. Is Netanyahu trapped in Biden's trap? Well, looks like he is. And let me tell you what's happened over the weekend. A lot. US President Joe Biden laid out a ceasefire plan for Gaza. The plan is threefold, essentially. Benjamin Netanyahu's cabinet has warned him against accepting the plan. But Biden says it's high time. It's time for this war to end. These are Biden's words. So the question really is, what will Netanyahu do? Will he take the plan and lose his cabinet? Or will he shun the plan and lose whatever little support he now enjoys of the Americans and the Europeans? That, you see, is the Biden trap. And the question is, can Netanyahu get out of it? 2 of his far-right ministers have threatened to resign and bring down Netanyahu's government if he accepts the peace plan. The first phase of this plan proposes a 6-week ceasefire. During these 6 weeks, Israel's army would have to withdraw from the populated areas of Gaza. Hamas would have to release Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. Gazans would be allowed to return to their neighborhoods. Trucks carrying humanitarian aid would be allowed into the enclave on a daily basis. And then comes the second phase. During this phase, Hamas and Israel would negotiate terms for a permanent end to the hostilities. The ceasefire would continue as long as the negotiations continue. The third phase would start with a permanent ceasefire. Gaza would be reconstructed. 60% of its clinics, schools, universities, mosques would be reconstructed. So this is Biden's peace plan. one that he claims the Israelis came up with. But Israel's finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, says that he rejects immediate ceasefire. In a statement, Smotrich said that he told Netanyahu he would not, quote-unquote, be part of a government that will agree to the proposed outline and end the war without destroying Hamas and returning all the hostages. In other words, Smotrich wants the war to continue till Hamas is destroyed. And the National Security Minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, could not agree more. Ben-Gvir, in fact, thinks the deal is reckless. He also called it, quote-unquote, a victory of terrorism. Let me just read out for you what else Ben-Gvir has said. I'm quoting, if the Prime Minister implements the reckless deal under the conditions published today, which mean the end of the war and the giving up on the elimination of Hamas, Otzma Yehudit will dissolve the government. Otzma Yehudit is the party that Ben-Gvir leads. It's a part of Netanyahu's coalition. But Ben-Gvir is not just any alliance partner here. Together, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir's ultra-nationalist and far-right parties hold 14 seats. Netanyahu is over-reliant on their support. And without these leaders, Bibi's government falls. So what will he do? Listen to the far-right leaders and not take the deal? Netanyahu's war cabinet does not seem to agree. In the war cabinet, by the way, are Netanyahu, his principal opponent, Benny Gantz, and Israel's defense minister. Gantz believes the war cabinet should move forward with the peace proposal. And think about the next steps. Gantz had, in fact, threatened to leave the cabinet by the 8th of June if the Netanyahu government failed to agree on a plan for Gaza. And by the way, he's not the only one showing his support for the peace plan that Biden claims Israelis have come up with. Israel's opposition leader, Yair Lapid, is promising support. And then you have the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, endorsing the plan, as are Israel's Western allies. So we are back to the question, what will Netanyahu do? Is he trapped? There are protests within Israel. The families of the hostages have had enough. Their loved ones were taken away to Gaza on the 7th of October 2023. It is the 3rd of June 2024. And there is no word on when the hostages will be back. The only thing that's clear is that Netanyahu has failed to #bring them back. This deal that Biden is proposing promises to bring back the hostages. Will Netanyahu choose hostages or power? At home, he is steadily losing support since October 7, by the way. The terror attack exposed his government's unpreparedness. The days that followed exposed Netanyahu's failure to appropriately respond to the unprecedented crisis. And now, 8 months on, Netanyahu has failed to do what he had set out to do, which is to eliminate Hamas. But in the process, over 36,000 have died in Gaza. Hostages, too, have not all come back home. There is anger not just within Israel, but also outside. You saw what happened in US campuses. Let me now tell you what's happening in the Maldives. The country says it will be denying entry to people with Israeli passports. While Mali has not given any details on that ban yet, Israel's foreign ministry has been quick to respond. It has asked Israelis holidaying in the Maldives to leave immediately. The foreign ministry said, and I'm quoting here, for Israeli citizens staying in the country, it is recommended to consider leaving, since if they fall into distress for any reason, it will be difficult for us to help. Earlier today, the Israeli embassy in India also put out this post. It reads, since the Maldives is no longer welcoming Israelis, here are some beautiful and amazing Indian beaches where Israeli tourists are warmly welcomed and treated with utmost hospitality. The tweet had pictures of Lakshadweep, Goa, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, even Kerala. But that's besides the point. It's the growing global anger against Israel that we are focusing on tonight. Netanyahu, you see, stands to add fuel to it by rejecting the peace plan. But accepting the plan could be dangerous for his political survival. A new poll suggests that if an election were to be held today, Benny Gantz, not Netanyahu, could become the prime minister. Should this election happen, Netanyahu's alliance could win just 51 seats in the parliament, while Gantz's National Unity Party and the opposition parties could together win as many as 69 seats. This poll was run by Israel's public broadcaster. Netanyahu knows his days as prime minister are numbered. He also knows that if he proceeds with the plan, his government falls. But Yair Lapid has now said his party will back Netanyahu if the far rights back out. So will that nudge Bibi to accept the plan? Hamas says it views the proposal positively, and all eyes are now on Netanyahu. What will he choose? Peace or isolation? Will Netanyahu choose hostage return or power? Biden's trap has been laid. Will Netanyahu give peace a chance, or will he pick politics? Shifting our focus to India now. The country is ramping up its naval defense facilities around the peninsula. It is building an undersea fortress, a sanctuary for its submarines. It's called INS Varsha, the Hindi word for rain. And where is it located? What does it mean for India? Should the enemies watch out? The naval base is under construction on India's eastern coast at Rambili. It is located some 60 kilometers south of Visakhapatnam. This is where it lies on a map. It will be spread across some 1,600 hectares. The base is expected to have extensive underground tunnels. What for? To house nuclear-powered submarines, between 8 to 12 of them. Also, the Baba Atomic Research Center is constructing a research and development complex at Achyutapuram. It is merely 20 kilometers away from the naval base. The research center will help support the base. Submarines would not have to leave the naval base for construction and fitting of nuclear reactors, and this essentially will keep them safe from the enemy's eyes. The new submarine base is being built at a strategically important location. It will serve as an exclusive enclave with an easy access to the Bay of Bengal. It's crucial for India to have naval presence in this region to deter China. Beijing has a string of pearls encircling its major trade routes. It controls multiple commercial and military bases and ports near the Bay of Bengal. It has the Kyaukphyu port in Myanmar, Hambantota in Sri Lanka, the Industrial Development Zone near Chittagong, and Paradip Seaport in Bangladesh. All these ports basically allow China to keep a close eye on India. Apart from that, Beijing is also heavily dependent on the Indian Ocean for trade and energy supplies. About 80% of Chinese crude oil and 60% of its trade passing through the maritime choke points of the Indian Ocean, namely the Malacca, Sunda and Lombok Straits. And by having a strong presence near the Bay of Bengal, China gets to have some control over the Indian Ocean. And that's exactly what India is planning to counter. It has been boosting its naval defense capabilities for some time now. Project Varsha is the latest addition. In March, the Indian Navy commissioned a new base on Minicoy Island, which is part of the Lakshadweep archipelago. The base is known as INS Jatayu. It is located off India's southwestern coast and some 130 kilometers from the Maldives. The move hinted at a strong message to China, which has deepened ties with the Maldives since Mohammad Moizu came to power. India, you see, is flexing its naval prowess in international waters as well. Recently, 3 Indian Navy ships, destroyer Delhi, fleet tanker Shakti, and anti-submarine corvette Kiltan concluded an operational deployment to South China Sea. This was after the Navy's Eastern Fleet saw port calls beginning with Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, the Philippines, Brunei. Earlier, the Indian Navy deployed warships close to the Red Sea to protect merchant ships from Houthi attacks. It has been the first to answer SOS calls and has carried out multiple daring rescue operations in the region. We've been telling you about that. The Indian Navy has also been rescuing ships from Somali pirates who has suddenly become active. You see, the Indian Navy is strengthening its presence in the form of new bases, warships, and being a reliable security provider. Russia is currently in the midst of a new offensive in Ukraine, one that could change the very course of the war. The goal is simple. Putin wants to take more land to pressure Ukraine to come to the negotiation table. However, halting the war could come at a cost for Ukraine. The Russian president wants a ceasefire based on the current battlefield lines, which basically would mean Ukraine will be forced to cede territories. And with Ukraine's front lines rapidly collapsing, will Zelensky be forced to accept the changed front lines? And here's why we ask these questions. Just have a look at Ukraine's map. Here's how its front lines are looking like right now. The fighting is currently occurring at three key fronts, specifically Kharkiv, the east, and Robotyne. In the south, while in the north, Moscow's troops are aiming to bring its troops within artillery range of Kharkiv city. In the south, the battle is on to recapture villages that were liberated during Ukraine's counteroffensive last year. Let's just understand the situation on the ground one by one. After focusing much of their forces this year on the east, Russian troops have launched a surprise offensive in the northeastern region of Kharkiv. On Sunday, in fact, Russia said it had taken over a key village in Donetsk and had struck Ukrainian forces in multiple directions, destroying their weapons and ammunition depots. And on the same day, Ukraine said it had repelled a Russian offensive in Kharkiv. They said that their troops were engaged in 17 battles with Russian troops. Evidently, the fighting has intensified. You see, since Russia started its offensive in Kharkiv, it has quickly taken control of several Ukrainian villages. These attacks allow Russia to divert the already thinly stretched Ukrainian resources away from other front lines. It allows the Russians to create a buffer zone from the Ukrainian attacks on Russian border regions. For instance, the nearby Russian city of Belgorod has increasingly come under Ukrainian attack in recent months. Moving on for now, before the Kharkiv offensive, Russia had largely focused its offensive capabilities in the east, and Russia's focus was on the eastern front lines. Since October 2023, when Ukraine's highly anticipated counteroffensive failed to make any gains, let's not forget capturing Ukraine's eastern industrial heartland, known as the Donbass, still remains one of the key war goals of Russia. And remember, Russia managed to have major success along this front when they took the town of Avdiivka in the month of February. And since the fall of Avdiivka, Ukraine has not been able to stop the Russian troops from making steady progress westwards. And lastly, the battle for Robotyne. In the southern front lines, Ukrainian forces are coming under immense pressure. Southeast of Zaporizhia, Russia has also made advances in this area. The small village of Robotyne is now completely destroyed. It is a village that has changed hands several times during the war. It was first captured by Russian forces in early March 2022. Moscow claimed control over it again earlier this month. But Ukraine has not quite admitted it. The situation in Robotyne serves as a clear example of the volatile nature of the battlefield. All three fronts are experiencing heavy fighting. The new Russian offensive, which began in early May, saw thousands of Russian soldiers break through the northern border, forcing the Ukrainians to redistribute the troops from other areas to defend the positions. According to experts, Russia is currently employing a strategy that involves exploiting Ukraine's vulnerabilities. They are insufficient manpower, artillery shortages, sparse air defenses, and inadequate defensive fortifications. Now, you may be asking yourself, what is the end goal for Russia really? If it actually wants to bring Ukraine to the talking table, why continue with the offensive, right? And the answer to that is quite simple. You see, Russia aims to capture as much Ukrainian land as possible before the promised weapons from Europe and America arrive. Now remember, Ukraine's Western allies have given Ukraine permission to use Western weapons to strike inside Russia. So before the Western weapons reach Ukraine, Russia wants to gain enough territory inside Ukraine. All before Ukraine even fires a single shot with those Western weapons. Last week, in fact, Putin stated that he is ready for a ceasefire with the condition that Ukraine acknowledges the altered realities on the ground, which means that Ukraine must recognize the current front lines as Russian territory. Currently, by the way, Russia occupies approximately 18% of Ukraine, including parts of the country's 4 southeastern regions. And experts say that Putin is getting ready to solidify Russia's war in Ukraine. Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, Kherson, despite the Ukrainian president's refusal to accept peace in Russian terms. Last week, a desperate Zelensky, remember, urged the West to compel Russia to seek peace. In the face of Russian advances on the battlefield and skepticism around whether the Western weapons will really help Ukraine protect itself, calls for peace between Ukraine and Russia have only intensified. And the question is, will Ukraine accept the changed realities on the ground? And what will it take for the 2-year war to finally come to an end? We will have to wait and watch. Meanwhile, the battle-hardened Ukrainian troops are urgently addressing their weak spots and clinging on as they wait for the weapons from allies and fresh recruits to bolster their ranks. And our next story takes you to Portugal. On Sunday, the country was hosting an air show. It was happening in Beja. Planes and participants from around 30 countries had gathered in the city. The organizers were promising world-class aerial performances, model planes, simulator experiences, hot air balloon flights, static displays. But what no one saw coming was an aerial tragedy. During the show, 2 planes collided mid-air. Both the planes were Yakov Leviak 52. They were part of an aerobatic group. The collision resulted in the death of a pilot. The video of the accident is now going viral. Let's just play it out for you.
Bateram, já foi. Já, merda.
Não. Ai, não.
Bateram, já foi. Já, merda.
Não. Ai, não.
One plane crashed outside the airbase. The other somehow managed to land. Like we said, a pilot lost his life. The pilot of the other plane involved in the crash was injured. The air show was suspended following this accident. Will India receive America's hunter-killer Predator drone soon? According to Indian media reports, a team from the United States is currently in India to hold discussions on the acquisition of the MQ-9B drones. Although the deal has not been finalized, having these drones will be a great boost for India's security. After all, the Predator or Reaper drone is arguably one of the most potent unmanned aerial vehicles in the world. Just picture being stationed in a room and surveilling your adversaries from a distance of 2,000 kilometers while hovering just 250 meters above the ground. With a simple click of a button on the controller, you have the ability to unleash a barrage of missiles on the designated target. Tonight on Gravitas Deep Dive, we tell you all about the American Predator drone and how they will be a game changer for India's defense capabilities. In the decades immediately after World War II, military forces of many countries used target drones as well as remotely piloted vehicles called RPVs. These are the direct ancestors of what we now know as UAVs or unmanned aerial vehicles. It was only in the early 1980s, that UAVs debuted as an important weapon system when the Israeli Defense Forces fitted small drones with trainable television and infrared cameras. They also had target designators for laser-guided munitions, all downlinked to a control station. Rendered undetectable thanks to their small size and quiet engines, UAVs quickly proved effective in battlefield surveillance, also target designation. Other armed forces, especially the United States, learned from the Israeli success. The US purchased some of the early Israeli models and developed tactical UAVs. Enter one of the most notable American UAVs, M1 Predator. It first flew in 1994, and the following year it entered service. The Predator, with a length of 26 feet 8 inches and a wingspan of 41 feet 8 inches, is powered by a piston engine driving a pusher propeller. It flies at 130 kilometers per hour. It has an endurance of 24 hours. And what's more, it carries synthetic aperture radar and electronic sensors. If that's not enough, it can also carry anti-tank missiles. The MQ-9 Reaper is a powerful turboprop-driven evolution of the Predator, delivering enhanced performance and the capacity to carry a greater ordnance load. Both the Predator and the Reaper have been deployed by the US in conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan. They have been purchased by US's allies. Specifically, the drones potentially destined for India are called the MQ-9B Sea Guardian, produced by General Atomics Aeronautical Systems. These are the first hunter-killer UAVs engineered for enduring high-altitude surveillance. It's a kind of what is known as high-altitude long-endurance drone. They boast an endurance of over 40-plus hours and a maximum operational altitude of 50,000 feet. They can carry 2,155 kgs of payload, including 4 missiles. The MQ-9B Sea Guardian is capable of executing offensive missions, reconnaissance, surveillance, intelligence operations. The deal, estimated at $3.99 billion, is yet to be finalized as talks on technology sharing continue. The team from General Atomics is reportedly in New Delhi to negotiate the acquisition of 31 drones, with 15 designated for maritime roles. The US government approved the deal in February, remember. However, discussions on technology sharing have not yet been finalized. Once operational, the MQ-9B drones will reportedly be stationed at 3 planned hubs in India: the South Indian state of Tamil Nadu, North India, and the Northeast. Having them as a part of its arsenal will enhance India's maritime security and domain awareness capability, to say the least. It will enable surveillance and reconnaissance patrols in sea lanes of operation, thereby bolstering India's capability to meet current and also future threats. And for those reasons and more, the MQ-9B will be a great addition to India's arsenal. And we now turn our attention to the massive jump in Indian stocks after exit polls indicated a potential victory for Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the BJP. Benchmark indices hit new record highs on Monday, with the Sensex closed over 2,500 points at a new all-time high, and the Nifty recorded its biggest jump in 4 months. Our next report, getting you the details.
The Bharatiya Janata Party-led alliance is expected to win 350 to 400 seats in the 543-seat lower house of parliament. That is far more than the 272 needed for a majority. The alliance won 352 in 2019. Votes will be counted on Tuesday.
It's not just the good, forecast for NDA and BJP coming back to power with at least 350 plus seats. But I think the recent GDP numbers, which talk about a 8.2% growth rate, I think these all augur well, and the continuity of from a policy making perspective, a regulatory certainty. I think these are all very, very nice things to happen, and we can surely expect a big rally.
Exit polls comforted investors fretting about recent stock market volatility. The market cap of the Sensex index shot up by 12 lakh crore rupees. Investors were worried that the BJP may fall short of Modi's 400-seat objective. But a triumph will allow the party to implement measures needed to help India's fast-growing economy.
Conventional wisdom tells us that if we are talking about continuing reform, you will require a majority in parliament to be able to pass certain key reform initiatives. And if you have more seats in your favor, the likelihood of these reforms passing without significant challenge is very high.
Vinit Sambre, who oversees about $12 billion as head of equities at DSP Mutual Fund in Mumbai, said, "There was some skepticism with volatility picking up as some people were getting jittery on the election outcome. Now it will settle. This is a resounding vote for continuity." While the final results might differ from the exit polls, the strength of the projected victory is expected to benefit risk assets. Should the results on June 4th align with the exit polls, analysts expect stock benchmark to gain further from record highs on Monday. Indian stocks fell last week as foreign investors treaded cautiously ahead of the election's outcome.
I can say with confidence that India is the only market in the world that will outperform the U.S. in the next 5 years that I'm aware of. It's because of earnings growth. And I mentioned earlier, you've got strong economic growth that actually translates into profits.
Gary Dugan, Chief Investment Officer at Dalma Capital Management in Dubai, said, "The suggested size of the majority would allow the government to continue unabated with its current policy program." Dugan expects markets to gain 3 to 5% on Monday. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
The Delhi High Court has issued an ominous warning. It has said that the national capital could soon become a barren desert. Let me read out the entire statement for you first. Justice Tushar Rao Gedela said, and I'm quoting, "Judicial notice is taken of the fact that as recent as on May 30th, the official temperature recorded in Delhi was 52.3 degrees Celsius. It is not far to see the day when the city may be only a barren desert. In case the present generation continues an apathetic view on deforestation." Now, his remarks came after Delhi's Mungeshpur area on the 29th of May logged a maximum temperature of 52.3 degrees Celsius. It was supposed to be the highest ever recorded in the city. However, later it was clarified that the weather station sensor was faulty and the correct temperature recorded by it should have been 3 degrees lower. So that would be around 49 degrees Celsius. So we may not have crossed the 50 degrees Celsius mark, but we are inching very close to it. Delhi, you see, is reeling with soaring temperatures. The Indian Met Department issued a yellow alert in the city. It will remain in effect until tomorrow. But it's not just the heat that's beating down the people of Delhi. It's also the acute water shortage that accompanies it. The demand has far exceeded the supply of water. Taps are running dry in households. Tanks are empty to the bottom in some parts. Cuts in water supply becoming frequent, unfortunately. In fact, the authorities are saying that all measures are being taken, trying to ensure optimization, rationing and targeted supply of water. Despite that, the dry spell continues. The government has now approached the Supreme Court. It has sought urgent directions to Haryana and Himachal Pradesh to release more water to the National Capital Region. Himachal Pradesh, in fact, has agreed to share its surplus water with Delhi, but since the state does not share a physical boundary with the capital, the water will have to be transported through the Wazirabad barrage. This would require the facilitation and cooperation of the Haryana government, which, according to the Delhi government, is not being provided. The Supreme Court has now called on the concerned stakeholder states to resolve the crisis. During the course of the hearing, by the way, the Solicitor General said the board can meet and arrange for additional water, but he pointed out that Delhi government must stop nearly 50% wastage of water supplied to the national capital. Will we ever find a solution for this? Did the UK recruit a Chinese couple as spies? I'm asking that question because China has leveled a big charge against the UK's intelligence agency. China has arrested a married couple after accusing them of spying for Great Britain. In what seems like a plot straight out of a spy thriller, China's Ministry of State Security says that two people arrested were successfully recruited after the operatives exploited the man's strong desire for money. China's Ministry of State Security has alleged that the agency started cultivating Wong in 2015 when he was studying in the UK under a Sino-British exchange program. The operatives allegedly took special care of him in the UK. They invited him to dinners and tours. What was the alleged goal? To better understand his interests and his weaknesses. According to Beijing, in fact, the operatives allegedly befriended Wong on campus under the guise that they were alumnus. The Chinese ministry saying that although Wang was initially hesitant, he eventually gave in after repeated persuasion, enticement, and even coercion. They got Wang to provide paid consulting services. Through Mr. Wang, the MI6 operatives also recruited Ms. Zhu to spy for China. And that's how the couple became British spies. Both Wang and Zhu are Chinese citizens, by the way, and allegedly had core confidential roles in an unnamed state agency. The arrest came amid a series of accusations of high-level espionage that China and Britain, as well as other European states, have made against each other. Beijing's accusations come weeks after the UK charged two men with spying for China. The men, remember, were accused of giving articles, notes, documents, or information to a foreign state. At the time, China responded by calling the allegations, quote-unquote, malicious slander. Now, coming back to the present case, China is yet to reveal how it uncovered the case involving Wang and Zhu. Beijing only said that it came after a thorough investigation. The case is still under investigation. It's also unclear why Beijing has chosen to publicize this case. Is it a form of retaliation against Britain? Given China's opacity, it's difficult to say for sure, and the coming days will perhaps tell us more. Taking time off. Just try explaining the idea of it to your parents or even to a recruiter. You would perhaps immediately see a frown appear on their face. In this age of hustling, where billionaires actually promote working around the clock and through the week, the idea of taking time out of work is often frowned upon. Worse still, it's seen as a sign of weakness. Why do you need to take time off work? Are you overwhelmed? Is work getting to you? Does this mean you are undeserving of this position? Are you, I'm afraid, incompetent? Did we promote you too early? These are questions that tend to float around the moment you tell people at work or Indian parents at home that you want to take a break. But why am I telling you this tonight, you might be wondering? So that the next time someone stops you or asks you why you stepped out of the rat race just to catch a breath, you can actually tell them the story of Simone Biles. I'm guessing most of you have already heard about her. This is Simone Biles. She is an American gymnast, one of the very finest that the sport has ever seen. In 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games, Biles made global headlines. She was a 4-time Olympic gold medalist. She was expected to pick another medal at Tokyo. The Games were supposed to be the final crowning moment of her career. But that's not why the world was talking about her. Biles, you see, had trained very hard for the Games. But on her first event in the women's team final, the vault, Biles lost track of herself in the air. She found herself landing awkwardly, and soon Biles stepped down from the vaulting podium and withdrew from the team event. Simone Biles did not shy away from telling the world why she was choosing to take time off. To focus on my well-being, that's what she said. Adding, there is more to life than just gymnastics. Biles did the bravest thing in Tokyo. She put herself first, not her sport, not the Games, but herself. Simone Biles did not think about the audience, about what people at home perhaps would say, about their expectations, what brands would say. Simone prioritized herself and her mental health. Today, Simone Biles has come back stronger than ever before. Biles has just won her 9th national all-round title. She won gold medal in all her routines. Biles said it was all about getting out there and getting comfortable and confident in her gymnastics. I couldn't be more proud of how I am doing this time of the year, she said, adding, just getting that confidence over and over, getting myself back in front of the crowd and just doing what I do in practice. That's what she said. Biles is now the first American gymnast to win 9 all-round national titles. Since coming back from her time off, Biles has become the most decorated gymnast ever. She has also led the American team at the World Gymnastics Championship. And what's more, Simone Biles has won the Associated Press's Female Athlete of the Year award. Biles is all of 27 years old, and she is now gearing up for her 3rd Olympic run. She will be one of the most followed athletes in Paris. Simone Biles' story has come a full circle, and that's what our story tonight is about. Taking time out, taking time off, is by no way a reflection of your merit, of how much you are actually capable of, your worth. If anything, being brave enough to actually step out of the race speaks volumes about a person's understanding of himself or herself. It's one's confidence in herself that allows her to go ahead and just take some time out of work, because she knows the break is temporary and that she will return stronger. Like Biles, we all work very hard when it comes to our careers. We all have checklists, goals that we want to achieve. And as we continue to chase those goals, we often tend to ignore everything else around us, including our mental health perhaps, and our physical health. So it is important that we take some time off to cater to that, to heal ourselves. What's more, employers should actually encourage it. Because studies, by the way, show that taking time off increases productivity. It also increases creativity. It brings new ideas to the table. Often we are so busy chasing deadlines that we forget to think outside the box. And having some time off allows us to think of new ideas. It allows us to work on ourselves. And the sporting world has given us enough examples here. Think of Naomi Osaka. She was world number 2 in 2021 when she withdrew from the French Open following her refusal to speak to the press post-match. Osaka said basically that she wanted to take some time away from the court. Osaka took a 4-month break from tennis. She returned with a win. And what does that tell you? That there is nothing wrong in taking time off, and if someone tells you otherwise, tell them the story of Simone Biles. Tell them the story of Naomi Osaka. An alarming trend is on the rise. Young adults are getting cancer twice as fast as the elderly. Why is this happening? Experts are linking the trend to a change in diet patterns. Our next report bringing you all the details. Have a look.
British researchers have made an alarming revelation. More young adults are getting cancer than ever before. The cases are rising twice as fast among under 50s than in the elderly. According to new evidence, this disturbing surge in early onset of cancer is linked to harmful gut bacteria and chronic inflammation. And what exactly causes it? A shift in diet patterns. Cancer rates among British adults aged 25 to 50 have increased by 24% since the 1990s. 35,000 people in this age group are now being diagnosed with the disease each year. The rise is much steeper than in any other age group. The second biggest increase of 16% was seen in those under 25, while the lowest rise of 10% has been among those over 75. The figures were published by Cancer Research UK at the American Society of Clinical Oncology meeting in Chicago. It was the world's largest cancer conference. According to experts, the findings indicate a new cancer risk factor, one that has emerged in recent decades. We are talking about the changes in Western diets over the past 30 to 40 years. The biggest one being the use of sweetness in ultra-processed foods. Multiple studies have suggested that the microbiome, that is, the colonies of trillions of bacteria in the gut, can explain this rise. Patients with early onset bowel cancer were found to have more harmful gut bacteria. This has been linked to poor diets and highly processed foods. These bacteria can lead to chronic inflammation or mutations in the DNA. This in turn leads to tumors. Yes, there are many preventable causes of cancer that we know about. This includes smoking, obesity, also red meat. But they don't explain the increase we are seeing in one particular age group, that is under 50s. When researchers at The Ohio State University studied the cells of bowel cancer patients aged below 50, they found that their cells appeared to be 15 years older than their real age. This was potentially because of damage from the long-term inflammation linked to harmful gut bacteria. So you see, a poor diet can not only lead to obesity, it can also put you at risk of cancer. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Time now for Gravitas Recall. The date today is the 3rd of June. And on this day, in the year 1989, the eyes of the world were on China. Beijing was crushing hopes of democracy. It was crushing dissent. The massacre was happening in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. For months, students from around China had gathered in Tiananmen Square. They were calling for freedom of expression. They were calling for accountability, ending corruption. On the night between June 3rd and 4th, tanks started rolling into Tiananmen Square. Heavily armed troops opened fire at the protesters. How many protesters died? We don't know. China never revealed the numbers, but it is believed that at least hundreds of protesters and bystanders were killed that night, if not more. And by morning, Tiananmen Square had been cleared of protesters. The revolution was over. And that's all we have time for in this edition of Gravitas tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show. Namaste. Hello, friends. We did Dr. Subhash Chandra show, popularly known as DSC show, for 4 years, from August 2014 to August 2018. 28 states of Bharat. Of course, we reached out to all of you in 190 countries across the world. The show was very successful. Each episode was being watched by almost 25 million people every week. For past 6 years, the demand of the show has never died down. People write to us, people ask for the show to restart again. Hence, we are beginning the show once again on All Z Network, also on WION, which is the global network channel from India. Again, thank you for your love and affection. See you soon at Subhash Chandra Show.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Vielleicht nur